Around 4 billion years ago, there was no oxygen on Earth. Life consisted only of single-celled organisms, all of them anaerobes. They were mostly playing around with gases like methane. But then, something happened that changed the definition of life. A bacterium developed the ability to perform photosynthesis, and for the first time, Earth was introduced to oxygen. At the time, oxygen was toxic to most life. It wiped out almost all existing microbes, an event now known as the Great Oxygenation Event. But slowly, oxygen began to fill the atmosphere and helped form the ozone layer. Over time, some organisms learned to use oxygen for energy, and that changed everything. Aerobic respiration is 18 times more efficient than anaerobic. That extra energy allowed life to grow larger and more complex. At this stage, eukaryotic cells began to evolve. And there begins our story. One day, a eukaryotic cell engulfed a cyanobacterium, but didn't digest it. Instead, they formed a symbiotic relationship. The cyanobacterium kept producing energy and oxygen. The host cell offered it protection and nutrients. Over time, the cyanobacterium became a permanent part of the host cell, what we now call a chloroplast. This was the origin of algae. The same algae to which Earth owes 80% of its life today. The first reason life heavily depends on algae is oxygen. This tiny microbial community is the sole producer of 70% of Earth's oxygen. You've probably heard that forests are the lungs of the Earth, which is true, but plants reabsorb up to 60% of the oxygen they make, for their own needs. Algae, on the other hand, release most of their oxygen, around 80 to 90%, directly into the atmosphere, making them the true contributors to Earth's breathable air. Let's assume algae were erased all of a sudden. What would happen? Life would still continue for centuries due to the huge oxygen reserves, already present in the atmosphere. But once those reserves begin to deplete, animals would gradually start dying. Only insects and microbes would survive with the amount of oxygen plants would be making. Even plants would begin to suffer, because they photosynthesize only during the day, yet consume oxygen both day and night. Slowly, they would decline too. In the end, perhaps only 5 to 10% of life on Earth would survive in a world without algae. The second reason algae are vital to life is their role in the carbon pump. If you don't know what the carbon pump is, it's nature's way of shifting carbon dioxide from atmosphere to deep sea underground. Carbon dioxide is transported to the ocean floor, where it gets buried for an indefinite time, and life outside continues free from carbon-related problems. But what happens to carbon dioxide then? Well, it stays there for millions of years and contributes to the formation of fossil fuels or carbon-based rocks like limestone. This happens in oceans, which absorb about 30% of the carbon dioxide from the air we breathe. But that's not accurate. It's algae on surface of ocean which is the stem of this process. These algae, mainly phytoplankton, absorb carbon dioxide for photosynthesis and convert it into their body mass. And there happens another nature's phenomenon which we call as diel vertical migration. It is the phenomenon of movement of trillions of organisms from deep sea to the surface. Most of these are zooplankton. This is the biggest migration on planet and it happens every night. Basically, organisms move up to the surface to feed. The phytoplankton algae are eaten by zooplankton, and so the carbon algae absorbed in itself is now in zooplankton. It may get excreted as poop, which then sinks and gets buried in the ocean floor. Or it may become part of zooplankton's body permanently. Now when the zooplankton will die, its carbon-storing body will also sink and get buried in ocean floor. So either way, it's going to the bottom. This zooplankton could also get eaten by another creature which accompanied it in the migration. Same process will happen, but now by this creature. If we remove algae, there will be no carbon pump. Carbon dioxide level will rise drastically, and so will our biggest threat, global warming. The third reason is the dependence of sea life on algae, and especially of humans. Out of 8 billion people, 3.3 billion rely on seafood as their main source of protein, and over 200 million people are associated with the fish industry. Back to zooplankton. Zooplankton come near the surface to eat because their food, algae, lives on the surface. But they are not alone in migration. Small fish, and even big fish, came with the same purpose. It's because sea creatures know it's easy and most likely to find food near the surface. Fish go up to eat zooplankton. Whales go up to eat fish. Basically, phytoplankton stretches out and builds this food chain. Without algae, zooplankton would not survive, so ultimately, no other sea creature would either. Not just humans. Thousands of food chains depend on sea life. And all ocean life depends on phytoplankton, an algae. Another reason why algae are important in the ecosystem is their role in pollution reduction and decomposition. Algae absorb excess nutrients, especially nitrogen and phosphorus in polluted water, a process known as eutrophication control. It doesn't stop there. They also do this to heavy metals and toxins like cadmium, lead, mercury. Some algae can purify water after oil spills, and even help treat radioactive and industrial waste, giving us a cleaner environment. Species like chlorella have shown potential in bioremediation of radioactive isotopes and wastewater. These characteristics of algae promise a bright future, where their abilities could be used to almost wipe out pollution. Bioplastics, instead of petroleum plastic. Algae can be used to make biodegradable plastics that break down faster and cleaner than traditional plastics. Biofuels, instead of fossil fuels. Certain algae species produce natural oils that can be refined into biodiesel, jet fuel and ethanol. Algae grow faster than crops and don't compete with farmland used for food. Green fertilizers, instead of chemical fertilizers. Algae biomass is rich in nitrogen, phosphorus, and micronutrients, making it a natural fertilizer or soil conditioner. As direct food for livestock and aquaculture, algae are high-protein, nutrient-dense feed for fish farms, poultry, and cattle. They can replace soy and fish meal, which are linked to deforestation and overfishing. Spirulina algae is a superfood which is used by space travelers. Algae-based materials are used in eco-friendly packaging, clothing, fibers, and even skincare products, all of which are fully biodegradable and low impact. Aren't these our real problems today? Plastic waste, water pollution, clothing waste? So I've just explained, not only do we already heavily depend on algae for survival, but we can also increase our dependence on them for a better, cleaner future.